Well, apparently getting money from Uncle Sam is a whole lot easier than I thought. As long as you're pushing something green, plan on getting plenty of green from plenty of government agencies pushing the exact same project. Lizzie McDonald's got the details. Ron Meyer and John Cowan here to spell them all out. First, to Lizzie with some numbers that'll make you dizzy. What's going on?
So what happened was, it's not just any study, it's the Government Accountability Office saying this. They circulated the study that identified, for example, 7 wind-focused plans, initiatives across 9 executive branch agencies in the government, from which a developer won multiple awards or lines of financing to back a single project. That's just one example for the same thing. So, 82 wind-related initiatives, in other words, double dipping for wind. I got to tell you something. Green companies like this have political connections because they're the creation of government. And this shows not just that they have a lot of, financing from taxpayers, but they know how to play that racket to get financing from different arms of government because they know the government's not watching what the other hand is doing.
But you would think, Ron, that they would. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of money we're talking about here. The potential for redundancy, to say nothing of abuse, dare I say criminality, is rampant, but obviously not.
Well, this is something that's pretty common in the government. For instance, food stamps, there are 12 different agencies that handle different food stamp programs. For housing, there's about 9 different agencies that do housing assistance. And the whole waste thing, there's a great study that's put out by the NRCC today called the Waste List. And on it, they had the most hilarious list of programs that were funding, including a study of robotic squirrels, a climate change musical, and this is probably my favorite, 400 talking urinal cakes. And this is what we're spending our money on at the federal government level. They had over $43 billion of waste on this list. And $43 billion, just to put it into context, could actually fund 45,000 years of White House tours. So I think if we're going to talk about getting rid of waste and getting rid of abuse, and if President Obama insists on saying that we can't cut spending everywhere, how about start cutting in these things?
Well, but maybe there was a method to the madness, John, and if depending on your perspective, whether it is madness, if you improve the potential financial clout of a particular initiative, you improve the odds of success of that initiative. And the more money that you get for that, and let's say it's a friendly initiative, then you might be in better shape. That initiative might have a better chance of success. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, Neil, you're right about that. But also, look, we shouldn't be wasting money in the federal government. We can all agree to that. But also, this report made very clear, its exact words were, that much of this funding had a significant impact, quote unquote, significant impact on these projects actually coming to life. So sure, is there money wasted? Yes. Should we get rid of it? But the report, and let's be very clear, the report did not call for eliminating subsidies of wind energy project. It talked about consolidating them and making better use of the money that they noted had a significant impact. The other thing is here, we should be honest, is this a conversation about wind energy and whether it should be subsidized, or energy overall? Because, for example, in the same time period of this report, we spent about $11 billion on oil and gas subsidies, money on nuclear subsidies, et cetera. The real question is, should government be subsidizing any kind of energy? And I'd argue, yes, there are appropriate instances where it absolutely should be.
No, I would argue against subsidizing anything.
Yeah,
I think you get zero at some point. That would include fossil fuels. That would include energy. The whole shooting works. So I don't know what bang for buck. That's just a personal opinion. But Lizzie, I guess what bothers me most about this, whether you're an advocate for this sort of thing or not, you cannot be an advocate for all this redundancy that they never seem to get under control. I saw the same during the Bush years with multiple defense contractors and multiple defense undertakings. It happens under administrations. But now when the numbers get so big, the spending gets so big, these get to be more egregious.
Yeah, and it's not just that they're habitually self-deceiving. They have these reports, the Congress has these reports, the White House has these reports, but the attitude is sort of like, scoot down the bench, we're the government, you know what's best for you. And the thing is, they hit us time and again with tax increases and not fixing their own fiscal house first. And I'll tell you something about the solar wind initiatives that are going on right now. a lot of them are pipe dreams. A lot of them we know have failed, and they're not going to fill the nation's gas tank, and they're not going to, light the light bulbs or light houses right now en masse as we need them to. I am in agreement with you. Get rid of all the subsidies for energy and see what works in the marketplace, because I tell you something, China is undercutting us with solar panels, and so why should we be in there as taxpayers when we are running up against China funding these solar panel initiatives here in the United States?
Well, that's right. I think we have another idea we can add to this, too. I think we should freeze all the department budgets, and here's what we should do. Because we always talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, but guess what? It never actually gets cut. So here's what we should do. Freeze all the department budgets and say, you fund your own raises by actually cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And guess how quickly the waste, fraud, and abuse will be cut if we actually say your raises and your increase in pay is tied to how much you can actually cut out of those budgets and actually create efficiencies. I think if we do that, we'll see less redundancy, less waste, fraud, and abuse, and actually get to a federal government that's actually sustainable, which we don't have right now.
Well, I don't know if that's easily doable, because John Cowan, I remembering how they handled the Homeland Security Department. It was going to be really an amalgamation of all these other various agencies, everything from defense to FBI, CIA, part of their money. Well, they're all going into this uber agency that would handle our security. There's more overlap than there ever was. There are still a number of chiefs arguing with other chiefs who are arguing with all these other Indians, and we've been lucky, but sometimes by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah, I mean, there's two separate issues here. One of them is consolidating federal programs and making things work better. For example, the Obama administration saw there were 55 different transportation programs for funding highways, and they're consolidated down to 5. Every administration tries to do it. Some succeed, some programs don't. But look, we had the LIBOR scandal. It doesn't lead to the conclusion that, therefore, every bank and every financial institution is corrupt. Government, like the private sector, does things well and doesn't do other things well, and we need to constantly improve. The second point here, and this is important, though, is I do believe, and I may be the only panelist who believe this, that government does have a role in certain portions of the economy, though the private sector is the engine of growth. We're going to have a $2 trillion clean energy market globally by 2020. China is doing a lot through their government, and many other countries are, to try to win that over. We're going to need the government to play some kind of a role in getting a piece of that $2 trillion.
You just said that there's going to be a $2 trillion market, and then you just say that we need government to do that? If there's $2 trillion to be made somewhere, I know dozens of entrepreneurs who are going to go out there and make that product to do it. To say that we need the government to come in because it's going to be a growing market, that's asinine. That's what the free market is all about. That's why venture capitalists exist. That's why we have the American system. If there's money to be made, the people here in America will do it. We just have to actually let them free of regulation and get government under control.
All right, well, first of all, look, try not to describe other people's thoughts as asinine. That's pretty rude and uncalled for. But more importantly, I don't subscribe to your libertarian philosophy. I'm a pro-market Democrat who believes that the private sector is the engine of growth through all the vehicles you described, but that the government also has an important role to play in a range of things, from infrastructure to R&D. And I think history's borne my side of the case out. Well, if you want to say, let's just throw it up, our hands up, let the market sort it out, hope for the best, I don't subscribe to that philosophy.
All right, well, we're going to have you all back a little later, so don't wander too far, but we will at least address what has to be addressed here, and that is all this redundancy and overlap and multiple identical funding. If we can get that out of control, we could debate the worthiness of these government efforts, period. But at least the redundancy and the overlap in the funding, that has got to be addressed, whether you like this stuff or not.